Hello, guys. Hello, fellow Titaniacs. Welcome to another episode of Titanic, where I talk about anything related to Titanic. If it is White Star Line, Olympic, Titanic itself, its history, theories, and much more. Now, today, before this whole virus started, I took a library book I borrowed, and I scanned it to do this story that I liked. It's called Young Survivors, and this one's called Is the Titanic Doomed? It's the story of a passenger called Edith Brown. Now, doesn't look very well, but I will be able to read. So let's begin. The idea that the Titanic was fated for disaster never crossed Edith's mind's Brown. Such a notion seemed ridiculous to the 15-year-old South American. But that disturbing thought did occur to her on the third day of the voyage. It happened while Edith and her mother, Elizabeth, were each reading a book in the ship's second-class library, because she was actually a second-class passenger with her family. A strange, middle-aged woman, that's a woman if you can't see, sorry guys, it's just good show when I was trying to do it. Anyways, walked over and struck up a conversation with Elizabeth. Edith paid her little attention until the woman said, "There's something about this ship that I find unsettling." That was just a voice. Putting down her book, Edith was now all ears. Elizabeth, who by nature was a nervous person, cast an anxious glance toward Edith before asking the woman in what way. Quite frankly, I can't put my finger on it, but when we were in Queenstown, I felt kind of panicky. I wanted my husband to cancel the remainder of the voyage and get me off. The woman said that she and her husband had crossed the Atlantic several times before, but this is the first time she ever felt this tense. Since I've been on the ship, I haven't slept a wink. I have been feeling uneasy the whole time. Unknowing how natural it was to become jittery, herself Elizabeth decided to end the conversation, telling the woman, "I do hope you get a good night's sleep and settle down a bit as the trip goes on." Then Elizabeth returned to her book. After the woman, who neither saw again, left the library, Edith said, "Well, that was odd." She immediately thought of the disturbing moment during the boarding when she, her mother, and her father Thomas were walking up the gangway of the Titanic in Southampton. That is where the Titanic took off on April 10, 1912, as I mentioned in my first episode. Thomas suddenly became faint. His legs began to buckle, forcing him to grab the railing to keep from falling. "What on earth is the matter, Tom?" Elizabeth said, rushing to his aid. "I don't know, my dear," he replied, wiping his brow. "You're shaking, and you're pale as a ghost." To Edith, it looked as though he had seen a ghost. After taking a few deep breaths, he stood up and said, "I think I'm over it now." His legs steady again, he motioned to Elizabeth and Edith, "Let's get on board." Here in the library, Edith wondered out loud, "Is it possible Father had the same kind of premonition as the lady when we boarded? I shouldn't tell you this because I don't want you to worry, Elizabeth, but Father admitted to me later that he was overcome with a feeling that something bad was going to happen." She nervously tapped her fingers on her book. "Should we be worried?" Edith shook her head. "Nothing is going to happen. The ship is unsinkable." She didn't dare tell her mother what Thomas had said on the day of departure when the Titanic nearly collided with another ship as the Titanic was leaving the Narrow Channel in the harbor of Southampton. Now this, guys, is something I didn't tell you in the first episode, because I was just focusing on the main thing. So, so let's just continue. So you're gonna hear this. Let me see. Here we go. Let's start from that part again. As the Titanic was leaving the new channel in the harbor of Southampton, it moved past the American liner New York, which was moored alongside another ship. The suction, the triple propeller Titanic, was so powerful that the hawsers of the SS New York snapped off, causing dock workers to flee to avoid getting hit by the dangerous flying ends of the mooring ropes. The only hawser that didn't break was the one holding the bow. The stern of the New York swung out towards the port side of the Titanic. In the nick of time, tugboats moved into position and nudged the New York just enough so that the Titanic cleared the stern of the ship by only a few feet. After that, the close call, Edith's father muttered to her, "That is a bad omen." He also wasn't pleased that the Titanic had departed behind schedule, commenting, "A ship leaving late spells bad luck." So that guy's just had water. But thinking about her family history, Edith wondered if her father said this because of what had happened to his brother years earlier. Thomas' brother had captained the ship that sank at sea in a tragedy that took his life. That means that caused him to die. Sorry about this, I just have to keep shaking because my thing. Anyways, I just have to do this. Then there was a bizarre incident mentioned by 12-year-old Bertha. What? A fellow second-class passenger on the afternoon of the Titanic's departure. Bertha had accompanied her mother to tea with several ladies. A woman at the table practiced the ancient art of reading tea leaves. I do not know what that is, but let's see. A belief that the pattern made by the tea leaves at the bottom of a finished cup can tell the future of the tea drinker. After studying the tea leaf, Rita shook her head and admitted, "This is strange. I can't see anything. It's like there's just a blank wall and nothing beyond." Is the Titanic doomed? Edith wondered. She immediately pushed such an unpleasant thought through her mind. Sorry about that, guys. After all, this was the most thrilling time of her young life. She and her parents had left their home in Cape Town, South America, with plans to create a new life in Seattle, Washington. Her 60-year-old father, Thomas, was a well-respected investor and owner of several hotels in South Africa. Now, investors are people like money and owner, hotel. Now, if you don't know that, I did mention I do my main YouTube channel. This is just a separate one, but I am from the Marinelli Bears podcast. If you check out Marinelli Bears podcast and check out Money Talk, you'll understand a bit more about that. But anyways, let's go back to the story. Sporting a bushy mustache and always looking dapper, he was 20 years older than Elizabeth, a sweet-natured woman devoted to family and friends. Edith's parents doted on her, especially after her younger sister Dorothy died in 1908 at the age of 8 from diphtheria. Because she was short and slender, was given the best education possible. She and her parents often traveled to London to shop for clothes for themselves and fixtures for Thomas's hotels that he owned. Encouraged by Elizabeth's sister Josephine, who lived in Seattle, the Browns decided to move there so Thomas could operate a new hotel. In February 1912, Edith and her parents sailed to England and spent several weeks in London, where Thomas booked a second-class passage on the Titanic. For his American venture, Thomas brought linings, tableware, china, furnishing, and hotel equipment for the hotel, which were put in the ship's cargo hold. Meanwhile, Edith and her mother went sightseeing and shopping. They bought the latest fashions, including full-length wool coats with velvet cuffs and lapels, feathered and wide-brimmed hats, and buttoned-up leather boots. The rest of the worldly possessions were kept in Thomas's leather Gladstone bag, a cross between a small suitcase and a large briefcase. The bag held cash, jewelry, coins, gold coins to be more exact, and important documents. Thomas also wore a money belt, which hid cash in a concealed compartment, and had gold coins sewn in his formal vest in the hems of the women's coats. In those days, it was considered the safest way to travel with money. Edith had never thought to see her parents in such a high in such high spirits. She too was caught in the happy anticipation of the Titanic's main voyage and promising future in America. Her brain whirled with questions about the trip. Will I get to wear all the pretty dresses Mother and Father bought me? Will I meet people my own age on the ship? Will there be dancing? Will I like Seattle? Will I make friends? Will I go to school or work in Father's hotels? She could hardly wait to live out the answers. The Browns took the train from London directly from Southampton docks, where Edith got her first glimpse of the Titanic. It's so big and beautiful, she marveled. The ship's white superstructure towered above its massive black hull. Wisps of smoke curled out three of its four buff-colored, black-tipped funnels as the morning sun lit up the brass grass ringed portholes. Baggage carts, supply wagons, and cargo containers were pushed and pulled into position while cranes lowered freight into the hold. Early arriving passengers were already on the top deck, called the boat deck. I don't know if I mentioned it in the first episode, but the top deck, the very top deck of the ship, is called the boat deck. Now let us continue. Wait, let me just go here. Already on the top deck, called the boat deck, leaning against the rail and waving to well-wishers below. Porters were scurrying up and down the three gangways, carrying boxes, packages, and flowers. As Edith and her parents headed up the passenger gangway, her mounting excitement was interrupted by Thomas's near-fainting spell. Once he recovered, they hurried to the cabins. To save money, Edith and her mother shared a cabin on E deck, while Thomas shared a single bunk cabin with a male passenger. Edith took the top bunk, which, like the others, had curtains for privacy, big white pillows, and crisp white sheets under a bedspread with the White Star Line logo in the center. White Star Line is the people who own the Titanic. Over the next few days, Edith made new friends and spent most of the time curled up with a good book in the wood-paneled, well-stocked library. On Saturday, the fourth day of the voyage, the Browns were lounging outside on deck chairs when the Titanic 62-year-old captain, Edward John Smith, I mentioned him in the first episode, stopped to chat with them. He looked every bit the part of a captain, dressed in a navy blue jacket adorned with 4 gold rings around each cuff, sharply creased navy blue pants, and black patent leather shoes. Are you enjoying the voyage? He asked. Sorry guys. It has been most pleasurable experience, Thomas answered. Turning his attention to Edith, the captain stroked his thick white beard and asked her, "And how about you, young lady?" "It's the best ship we've ever seen," she replied. The captain chuckled and said, "I'm glad to hear." Thomas asked, "Is the ship running on schedule?" "Yes, we are making good time because of the excellent weather," the captain replied. "The temperature likely will drop over the next few days, but that won't have any effect on arriving in New York on time. And now I must bid you goodbye. Have a pleasant day." He gave a half salute and walked on to talk with other passengers. The next day, Sunday, the Browns attended church services in the dining saloon, but spent the rest of the day below decks because it had turned cold outside. Before dinner that evening, the family braved the chill with a quick stroll and admired the beautiful sunset that had turned the Glass Lake Sea a vibrant gold. At dinner, they engaged in a lively conversation with their regular dining companions, the Reverend Ernest Carter and his wife Lillian, who were from a small, poor parish near London. For the personal middle-aged couple who had never been to America, this was a long-planned trip for a lifetime, partially paid for by the donation from Parrot and Oaks. "It's so cold outside," Edith remarked. So I'm just seeing how many more pages. One sec. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. I'm just curious. Sorry, but indeed it is, said Reverend Carter. "A steward told me some of the other ships in there had reported on the Marconi that they saw Icefield." "Oh, I hope we see an iceberg," said Edith. After dinner, the Browns joined about 100 people at a hymn singing conducted by Reverend Carter in the second lounge. He introduced them. He introduced each hymn with the story about its origin. Among the songs he sang what was for those in the Pearl on the Sea, which would soon prove sadly to be a fitting choice. At the end of the hymn, Reverend Carter said it is the first time that hymns had been sung on this boat, but we trust and pray it won't be the last. Sorry about that, guys. I just have to finish up quickly. At 10 p.m., Thomas escorted Edith and her mother to their cabin and then went to the smoking lounge. The two fell fast asleep. At 11:04 p.m., this is the big moment of April 14th, you probably know, they were wakened by a shudder and several bumps. I just do that for fun. Edith jumped out of the top berth, opened the porthole, stuck her head out, and stared into the blackness reflection of the lights from the ship danced gently on the calm sea. Looking toward the stern, she noticed the propellers were churning up the water and causing a distant vibration that caused glasses on the washstand to clink and the cabin to squeaking rattle. "I wonder what this is all about," Elizabeth said. Minutes later, the vibration stopped and so had the engine. Edith sat next to her mother and said, "Everything seems so quiet." The silence was broken by a knock on the door. Edith opened and saw her father, still dressed in his smoking jacket. He told them calmly, "There's talk that the ship has struck an iceberg." Elizabeth gasped, "Oh, my dear Lord." Edith stuck her head out the porthole again, but couldn't see any sign of of an iceberg or an icefield. Let's not get worried, but let's get prepared, Thomas said. Put on a warm clothing and life jackets. He reached on top of the wardrobe and pulled down the 2 life vests that had been stowed there. Both women donned warm jumpers and their new topcoats. Thomas helped them with their bulky life jackets, which were made of square chunks of cork, held together with stitched canvas that hung over the shoulders and were tied at the waist. There's a fun fact about the life jackets they wore that night. After the women put them on over their heavy clothing, Edith briefly ignored the crisis and giggled. "Oh, Mother, look at us! We're so fat!" Elizabeth was not amused. "Tom, where's your life vest? I'll find one later. The important thing is to get you both up to the boat deck." On the way up the stairs, Edith saw stewards in the hallways rapping on doors, calling, "Everyone up! Life vests on, please!" Arriving at the boat deck, the Browns parked themselves near Lifeboat 14, which was still covered and fastened to the davit. Passengers miled around in various attire, displaying different reactions. Some were clad in night coats, others in formal wear, some were fretting others, others were joking. Elizabeth was one of those fretting, which means fearing, stomping her feet to keep warm. Edith asked her father, "It's so cold out here. How soon before we can get back into our warm camp? Be patient. It won't be long before I'll be tucking you both into bed." Edith noticed he hadn't looked her in the eye. She figured he said that for the benefit of her whimpering mother. Seamen were busy preparing the lifeboats for lowering. Fifth Officer Harold Lowe, he was one of the officers who was in charge of filling and launching several lifeboats nearby, yelled at his crew, "Get a bloody move on!" That's British. Edith curled both her arms tightly around her father's arm as people were being helped into the boats. Because the ship had built up a good head of steam before the collision, the pressure had been vented to prevent the bars from exploding. With safety valves open, steam blasted out of the waste pipes at the top of the funnel, causing a constant ear-shattering roar that drowned out virtually all other sound. Officers, crew members, passengers communicated with hand signals. Those shouted through cupped hands, which means putting your hands together like this. "Is anyone alive? Is anyone?" like that. You put your hands up against your mouth. The blowing noise made some passengers cower there, thinking the ship was about to explode. Women covered the ears of the children with their hands or shawls. I don't know what shawls are. Several people crouched or clung to each other. Elizabeth clutched her husband's hands and burst into tears. After about half an hour, about 1 p.m., the constant blast began to diminish. Once again, people were able to hear each other. The ship's band, made up of 8 musicians, had moved from the first-class lounge to the boat deck and was playing the most popular waltz and ragtime tunes of the day to keep the passengers' spirits up. Not that they were paying much attention to it. "Women and children first! Hollered Low. "The rest of us stand back! Back away from the lifeboat!" Men pushed their loved ones toward the front of the unlaunched boat so they would be next in line. Elizabeth cried out in alarm, "Oh, Thomas, there aren't enough lifeboats to handle all the people." Now, Elizabeth," Thomas said soothingly, "you'd be surprised how many people these boats can hold." Edith knew he was lying solely to keep calm her mother. Edith had done the math. The ship had only 20 lifeboats, most with a capacity of 65. There were more than 2,200 people on board. Her mother was right. There weren't nearly enough boats for everyone. And not friend either. Still, the girl tried not to show how afraid she was. As Edith watched men assist women and children into lifeboats, Reverend Carter and his wife Lillian joined the Browns and tried to comfort them, saying that everything would turn just fine. Lillian chose to stay with her husband rather than go into a lifeboat.